Ericsson's vision really is to empower enterprises, business, and people to fulfill their full potential. Now, as part of that, what we talk today is how can we bring network society to life in India. So in India, the government actually laid out a vision that we want to have 600 million people with broadband connections, and each one of them on an average could get 2 Mbps of speed. Why do we need to do that? That's to drive the basic necessities, which is like education, health, and banking and commerce to larger parts of Indian society, whether that's in urban India, rural India, or lower income groups. Having said that, how can we make that happen? Now when we look at the current speeds, we are sitting at about 250 kbps, and 3G networks, when we look at those, they are about 1 Mbps. So we have to get to 2 Mbps, which means that operators will need to make investments in the networks, and those investments will be in two major areas. One is to provide the coverage so that there is ubiquitous coverage of these technologies in the areas where they are providing the service. And the second one is, as networks run out of capacity, to densify the network and to also provide indoor coverage. Now, there are many architectures, what we call as a HECnet architecture, which is about microcells, picocells, small cells, and Wi-Fi networks. We also see that the demand is going to pick up. We clearly think that 800 million subscriptions will go to 1.2 billion by 2020. Last year we finished with about 70 million broadband connections, and that will go to 600 million, or that has a potential to go to 600 million. All this would require smartphone pricing to go down. Now, we think smartphone prices will come down, but at the same time, the income levels will go up. Coupled with these two factors, 700 million Indians will be in a position to afford smartphones. Of course, smartphones need to have the right user experience, because that is one of the fundamentals to drive data. Alongside, the government is making several initiatives. One of them is NOFN, which is to take the fiber to village panchayats. 250,000 villages would be covered by 2016. That's the plan. Now, whether you run Wi-Fi on it, that will create a hotspot, or we think that the mobile broadband can be run off those things, and we have technologies like SI technology, for example, which in a cost-effective manner can allow you to cover not just that village but many other adjacent villages, so that people sitting in schools, people in the fields, people in other locations can get broadband. And that's what Digital India really needs. Once all this happens, the data will take off from the current levels. It will go to 1.5 GB on 3G networks, 4G networks could be 4 GB. On an average, we think that it will go from 600 to 850 MB of data consumption by users per user basis, depending on how much of video are they using. At the back of all this, operators have an opportunity now to create new revenue streams. So their data revenues from 10 to 12% can go up to 35 to 40%. And the new revenue opportunities will arise in enterprises, in entertainment space, education, health, commerce, and it's an innovative platform. It's a platform on which many innovations can take place. Now, one important aspect to make all this happen, to realize this vision, is the spectrum. Spectrum, we all know, is a natural resource. It's a scarce resource. So it needs to be used optimally. It needs to be handled optimally. And what I mean by that is we have to keep in mind a long-term perspective. So when we look at 3G services or 4G services, these services require contiguous spectrum. So minimum 5 megahertz, but operators globally actually have access to much higher spectrum than operators in India. So we think that operators in India should at least, no matter what technology are they running, for a given technology, they must have 10 megahertz of spectrum, and as much as possible contiguous spectrum. So government, industry, regulators all must work together to make sure that the spectrum is not fragmented, and spectrum is kept contiguous as much as possible, and that will drive the speeds, that will drive the services, because we are talking about many more years, like 20 years to come. Now, if the spectrum is contiguous, if operators have additional spectrum available, if the spectrum bands are harmonized, the smartphone pricing is coming down, then we clearly believe that the networks which are set up, they will provide a platform for Digital India vision to be realized.
What is the response from the government towards the 10 megahertz spectrum? Are they committed to release it?
Well, I think the industry is working with the government, and obviously there is a shortage. But what we are saying is that industry and government must work together to make sure that there is adequate spectrum available to realize this vision.